One observation which I put here is that your price is equal to marginal cost. That thing happened on that experiment. We also noticed that when the information is perfect, then the efficient firm, which is ABC, survived, right? So this is what we did in the classroom experiment, and this is the result. So before we go through the theory, we run an experiment, and you actually prove the prediction of the theory. So now today we are going to talk about the profit maximizing condition of the competitive firm. In fact, you'll find that that will be price equals to marginal cost, right? So the funny thing is, before you know that, you already did that. So today I'm going to cover that thing. Now before that, some of the things that you need to know is industry demand and the firm's demand. So always remember, the industry, what does that mean? It basically means an industry consists thousands of firms. It is possible, right? Now the industry demand curve, if you look at carefully, it is downward sloping demand curve. On the other hand, the firm's demand curve, the firm that belongs to that industry, is demand curve is perfectly elastic, which means it is parallel to the horizontal axis. Is that clear? Now, I'm not sure why this monitor is not working, right? So let me check whether this monitor is working or not. Right display, display. Anyway, now one of the important thing is, always remember, the competitive firm in the perfect competition, they are price taker. So I'm going to use the doccam now. So what does that mean? So here's the perfect competition. Can you see my handwriting? One of the important thing is, very often when you talk about the competitive market, you find this term is called a price taker. I'm going to talk about these things. What does that mean? The important part is the competitive firm has no market power. Think about this way. This is a wheat industry, right? Then obviously who belongs to that wheat industry, of those are wheat farmer, individual wheat farmer, right? Now the wheat industry demand curve for the wheat is this, supply is this. Eventually that will determine your equilibrium price, where P star and Q star. Once this price is determined, then each individual wheat farmer take that price as a given. So what does that mean? It basically means this wheat farmer has no market power to change the price, whereas wheat industry does have a market power. Now initially you might think how this is possible. I can give you an example, probably that will make it much easier to understand. Excuse me, what's your name? Jasmine? Okay. Suppose Jasmine runs a consulting firm. In that consulting firm, 10 economists working for her. She's the boss, right? Are you listening, Jasmine? This is the company you're running. So there's a 10 economists who's working for Jasmine, right? And each of them gets equal paid, say 50,000 per annum, right? One of them is me. And I'm not happy, I'm the problem maker. So what I'm complaining about, I'm going to her and say, look, the salary that you give me, 50,000 K, is not good enough for me. So increase the salary. Remember, out of this 10, I'm the only one who's complaining. No one else is complaining. So Jasmine, what will you do? Are you going to increase my salary? The answer is no. Why? She's right. Why she is not increasing my salary? Sorry? I talk to face-to-face and one-to-one talking. So other doesn't know what I'm doing. Right? No? Jasmine realized that Nobin has no bargaining power. Nobin is the only one who's making the problem, right? What she can do, she can fire me straight away. And the next day, she advertised and hired another one. Right? Now think about this way. All those 10 economists form a worker union. And Nobin is the president of that union. Right? Now I approach to Jasmine and I say, look, the salary is not good enough. Is she going to fire me? Why not? Something has changed. So now, as a president of the worker union, I have a power. That means the worker union has a bargaining power. If she says, oh, I'm not happy, then we can call for a strike. That will cost her a lot, right? So in that scenario, Jasmine might say, okay, Nobin, go back to the round table. I'm pretty sure we'll come up with something. So she will engage in negotiation, right? Here's the example. As an individual worker, I do not have a market power. Is that clear? But as a worker union, which is a collective body, they have a market power. Now the worker union set wage for the workers, and once the worker wage is set, each individual worker who belongs to that worker union take that wage as a given. Right? This is exactly what we are talking about there. So when you think about the industry, think about this as a collective body. Right? If you consider wheat farmers, apple farmers, or whatever it is, right? Whoever belongs that industry, these are the collective body, and the collective body has got a bargaining power, right? That's why their demand curve is downward sloping. But whoever is the member, each individual member is just like a worker, individual worker. They don't have a bargaining power. So what they will do, they will look at the industry, that fix up the price, and they take that price as a given and adjust their cost accordingly. So in other words, individual worker or individual farm in the competitive farm or competitive market structure, they are the price taker. They don't make the price, they take the price, which is determined by the collective body, which is industry. So if you have a problem, think about the worker union, which is your industry basically, and this worker union fixes up the wage. Once the wage is fixed, the member of the worker union, that is each individual worker, take that wage as a given. Clear? So this is how the competitive market works. Now, I will go back to the notes on perfect competition. So what is that? Oh, now this thing is coming. Okay, so notes on perfect competition is coming from this. So we'll go through these things. This notes is prepared in such a way that if you understand these notes, then no matter which market structure I'm going to discuss, you can answer straight away. It is just like those proposition 1 and 2, remember? So the competitive market is efficient. If you deviate from that, you end up with the inefficiency. Then all you need to do, look at the question, are we deviating from the competitive market because of the government intervention or any external shock? If the answer is yes, you know we end up with inefficiency. So similarly, I developed these things, and I'm going through these things one by one. So look at my first statement. The first statement, I try to make it bigger, right? Does it big enough? Okay. So what is this statement 1 says? Since individual firm has no market power, it has a demand curve which is perfectly elastic. Firm's demand curve is parallel to the horizontal axis. The important part or the important words here is no market power. Then we come to this statement 2, which says basically the opposite. A firm has a market power will face a downward sloping demand curve. In the perfect competition, it is the industry which will face a downward sloping demand curve. I already put an example, the worker union on those things. But now I'm going to prove it, and we call it pictorial proof, which means I'm going to draw a diagram to prove this. Before I prove it, so what is the main message of statement 1 and statement 2? So here's the proof. Statement 1 says, when someone has no market power, the demand curve the farm faces is just like this. And then statement 2 says when the farm has got the market power, then the demand curve it faces is downward sloping demand curve. Right? Now I'm going to prove it. What does that mean? So let's start with the downward sloping demand curve. Suppose here is the quantity, here's the price, and demand is downward sloping. Say, for example, my price is P. At P price, the demand is Q, right? Now, suppose I'm the producer, and I want to push up the price. How do I do that? I'm the only producer. Say I have a bargaining power here. I have a market power, right? Yes. Why I do that? The thing is, there's a couple of ways I can do it. I can point the gun to my consumer and say, you have to buy it and pay me this price. But you know, by law, that is illegal, right? I'll be penalized, so I can't do that. Alternatively, what I can do, I can cut back my production because that production is in my hand. I can make the goods scarce, so I can cut back the production from Q to Q1. As a result, immediately you see that creates a scarcity that will push up the price from P to P1. Clear? Or if I want to push down the price, then I will increase the production from Q to Q2, and eventually you'll see that will actually push down the price. Right? So what does that mean? If I have a market power, it is true I cannot affect the demand curve because that's the consumer's preference. I cannot change that. But I can change production. That is in my hand. I can make the good plenty or I can make the good scarce. By making the good scarce, it will push up the price, and make the good surplus or the excess supply, it will push down the price. Right? What is the best example? The best example is OPEC. Have you heard these things before? Petroleum countries, they form an organization and we call it OPEC. And OPEC is the monopolist. Right? They have a market power. Right before GFC 2008, 2006 or 2007, the oil price goes up. Did you know that? It's a oil price hiking across the globe. So people or across the globe, whatever the leaders are, they're asking this OPEC, can you lower the price? Guess what? What they did? They cut back their production and increased the price further up. Right? The reason is I'm a monopolist. I don't care. Only care that I do is my profit. Right? So clearly it says that if the demand curve is downward sloping, that indicates you have a market power because your scarcity or plentiness will change the price. Now suppose the demand curve, instead of downward sloping, what if the demand curve is like this? I'm going to do the same kind of analysis. So this is price. Initially, my Q is this. Now suppose I cut back my production from Q to Q1. Does it change my price? The answer is no. If I increase my quantity from Q to Q2, the corresponding point in the demand curve will be this. Does it change the price? The answer is no. That immediately tells me that this farm has no market power. It has no market power in a sense, by manipulating the production, it cannot affect the price or cannot change the price. Is that clear? So this is exactly what this statement 1 and statement 2 says. Statement 1 says, if farm has no market power, then the demand curve it will face is just like that. And if the farm has a market power, then the demand curve it faces like that, which is the downward sloping. The essential idea behind that is that if you have a market power, by manipulating the production, you can change the price. That actually reveals that you have a market power. On the other hand, if you have no market power, by doing the same operation, you cannot change the price. Clear? Now tell me, the competitive market, what kind of demand curve it will face? Especially the competitive farm. Remember, they are the price taker. So they don't have a market power, they will face this. Any farm, whether it's a monopoly, oligopoly, duopoly, it doesn't matter. Any farm that got a market power, always remember their demand curve is downward sloping. Now tell me, Amazon What kind of demand curve they are facing? This or that? First, because they are dominant firm all over the world, they have a market power, so their demand curve is downward sloping. So this is why this statement 1 and 2 are very important. Whenever they give you a question, the first thing is not just for economics course, anything that you do analysis, whether it is a Microsoft, pharmaceutical company, or anything else, the first thing you need to decide whether this firm has a market power or not. That's the first step, right? The moment you realize the firm has a market power, then you know the demand curve is downward sloping. And that will make later problem much easier to address. Is that clear? Now, how do you know that the firm has market power? One thing is either their product is protected by patent or copyright. For example, the Microsoft, they have a copyright patent. Or they produce a goods which are very unique so that no one else can replicate that. Like Pepsi or Coke, right? And they're very secretive about their innovation as well. Does it make sense? For example, McDonald's, KFC, you might get same kind of chicken fried everywhere else, but the taste will not be the same. And the KFC will never reveal what is their recipe, because that's their secret, right? When these sort of things happen, then you know there will be no close substitute. If there's no close substitute goods, then the demand curve will be downward sloping, because whatever they produce, it is unique to some extent so that no one can replicate, and that gives them a market power. Is that clear? So now, once we know that, so statement 1 and statement 2 is clear, right? So if you put in the competitive industry, always remember the competitive industry is a collective body. It has a market power, but the competitive firm, as an individual firm, it has no market power, so its demand curve is perfectly elastic. So statement 1 and 2 is gone. Now statement 3. Look at this statement 3. It says that if statement 1 holds, so what is this statement 1? Go back to the statement 1. It says firm has no market power, right? So if the firm has no market power, then you always find this will be true. Price equal to average revenue equal to marginal revenue. Now I'm going to prove it. How and why? So, statement 3 basically comes from the fact, suppose that statement 1 holds. So what the statement 1 means, it has no market power, so the demand curve is just like that. Remember that? The statement 1, no market power. If this is true, then statement 3 says price equal to average revenue equal to marginal revenue. That will be always true. Now I'm going to prove it. How? Remember, your total revenue by definition is price times Q. We already know from the last week lecture class, right? Now, your average revenue, it is by definition total revenue divided by Q. That means revenue per unit of output. So put the value of the total revenue, that is price times Q divided by Q, then this Q cancel out, then average revenue equal to price. So I just proved this bit. Right? Now I need to show that the price is also equal to marginal revenue. So let's see, what is the definition of the marginal revenue? That is the change in total revenue over change in Q. Again, go back to the last lecture class, you'll find that. Remember, this is one of the homework as well, the last table. So put the value of the total revenue, that will be change in price times Q over change in Q. Can I get that? Okay. Now, what this statement 1 says? Statement 1 says they have no market power. If they have no market power, can they change the price? But this means change, but they cannot change the price. So you need to write down P, change in Q over change in Q, because they cannot change the price. Price remains constant. So this is a delta word, is called delta in Greek letter. In mathematics, the norms, it means change, right? Whenever someone put delta of any variable, it means change in that variable. So I say change in total revenue, then I also know this statement 1 means no market power, so they cannot change the price, which I proved it here, remember? By changing quantity, they cannot change the price. So the price remain intact, which means price is constant. If the price is constant, then it will go before the change because it cannot change. Then all you can do is changing Q, right? But changing Q, that will cancel out. Eventually, marginal revenue equal to price. So what does that mean? It basically means average revenue equal to price. Marginal revenue is also equal to price. Then you can always say price equal to average revenue equal to marginal revenue. The idea is if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, you can always say A is equal to C. That's called a transitivity logic, right? Now we know one thing. What is that? That is the page 2. So this is page 1. What we learn? Well, if you have any demand curve which is like this, then this is a demand curve, this is price, this is quantity. You also know at that demand curve, price equal to average revenue equal to marginal revenue. Right? Now, who faces this kind of demand curve? The firm that has no market power. And in our case, what will be that firm? Competitive firm. So obviously, competitive firm faces this, then by definition, competitive firm also faces this. Price equal to average revenue equal to marginal revenue. Is that clear? Now we go back to this next proposition or property. Oh, property, okay. Now look at this. Once I finish this property, pretty much you finish monopoly, oligopoly, whatever you get, all are done. So look at this, what I'm saying. No matter what type of market structure is considered, so basically you can consider perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, monopolistic competition, monopsony, duopsony, you name it. I don't care. Then what it says, as long as firm is profit maximizer, it must satisfy the condition MR equal to MC. That means marginal revenue equals to marginal cost. What it means, every unit of output that you produce, your additional revenue must be equal to your additional cost. That is sometimes we call thinking at margin. Now I'm going to prove it. What does that mean? How this thing happens? Okay. Important part is, it doesn't matter what kind of market structure you consider. Monopoly, oligopoly, competitive firm, as long as they are profit maximizer, right? Later we'll say there is some problem there in that definition, but that will be for advanced level. So let's see how I prove it. Again, all my proof are pictorial proof, so basically I'm drawing a diagram to show that. So the first thing is, the property 1 basically says, as long as you are maximizing your profit, so if you are not maximize your profit maximize, that means you must satisfy MR equal to MC. It doesn't matter which market you belong. Now, because they are talking about the profit, so let's define the profit. Now, before that, I'll say the profit I denote as a pi. The Greek letter pi, you can say X, Y, Z, it doesn't matter, right? Now, then pi, by definition, is total revenue minus total cost. Can I write in this way? Is that right? So this is my income, this is my cost, income less cost, that will be my surplus, which is my profit. Now, I want to know how much my profit will change. So change in profit, that means delta profit, that will occur if there's a change in total revenue or change in total cost or both. Is that clear? Okay, so my change in profit will occur either change in total revenue or change in total cost or both. Clear? Now I will do one more thing. I want to dance with this equation. So divide both sides with change in Q. That will not change anything. Do you agree? Both sides in change in Q. But there is a purpose of doing that. Now I'm going to show you why I'm doing it. The first thing is, what is that? You already know that. Change in total revenue over change in Q, that's the marginal revenue by definition, right? So this part is nothing but your marginal revenue. Now this one, what is that? Change in total cost over change in Q, this is nothing but by definition, this means marginal cost. Again, go back to the last lecture class or week 1, you'll find it is there. Clear? So now what I get is change in profit over change in Q, you can call it marginal profit because it's the slope of the profit curve. It is equal to marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. I got that now, right? Now the question is not good enough. I want to see where my profit is maximized. So this is the profit curve. Generally, it looks like this. So what I'm doing here, here's my profit and here's a Q. What is my objective? Maximizing the profit. Which point maximize the profit? So that will be the peak point of this. So at this point, your profit will be maximized. So let's call it profit maximized. Do you agree? Now I want to think at a margin. So let's look at this point, I'm producing Q star. Am I right? So what will be the slope at point A? Remember the first week lecture class? If it's a curvature, you want to know the slope of that particular point, you need to draw a tangent line. So let's draw a tangent line which will be like this. And let's call this is LL. What will be the slope of LL? 0. So you already know that. Slope of LL is 0. But when this will happen? When the profit is maximized. Am I right? So how do I write the slope of LL? Remember, this is profit. So the distance, change in the vertical, you need to know the vertical run. So the change in this variable over the change in this variable, which you are showing in the horizontal axis, that will give you the horizontal run. Remember, the slope is vertical run over the horizontal run. So the vertical run, I'm showing the profit, so then it must be the change in profit. Sorry? Oh, can you see now? So the vertical line, I'm showing profit, so it will be the difference in two profits, so there will be change in profit. The horizontal run, I'm showing Q, then it must be change in Q. Right? But then I know this is the slope, and when profit is maximized, what will be that value? We already know, that's the thing, that will be 0. Now put this value is 0. That will be 0 equal to marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. But when you write it down, then you also write this will happen when profit is maximized. Right? Now you put the change, then you find marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. And that's the proof. Right? So what we learn here, basically what we learn, as long as you are a profit maximizer, you always find that the firm will satisfy MR equal to MC. Is that clear? Okay. So far what we have learned. So summarize all those statement 1 and 2 and 3 and let's see what we get so far. So this is page 3. Statement 1 says no market power. As a result, the demand curve is just like this. Remember? Then statement 3 follows from statement 1 where it says price equal to average revenue equal to marginal revenue. Right? Then we develop the property 1, what it says, if you are a profit maximizer, it doesn't matter which market you belong to, you must satisfy MR equal to MC. Now suppose I consider a competitive firm. At the same time, this competitive firm is a profit maximizer. So competitive firm is a profit maximizer. It must satisfy this. Right? Competitive firm has no market power, so it must satisfy this as well. Now if I put these things together, what we'll get? Remember, price equal to marginal revenue. Right? So any firm that has no market power, their price must be equal to marginal revenue, which is a competitive firm. Then we also know the firm that maximizes the profit, that must satisfy MR equal to MC. So if I put equation 1 and equation 2, from 1 and 2, exactly, so we obtain price equal to marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, which means price is equal to marginal cost. That's it. So if someone asks you what is the competitive firm's profit maximizing condition, forget about statement 1, statement 3, property 1. These are the proof. The main condition is P equal to MC. That's the profit maximizing condition, irrespective of anything else. Clear? Now, tell me, what you did in the last week? P equals to MC. Did you know those proof? How come you did that? That's the beauty, right? So the thing is, what it means, now I'm giving you the intuition. What does that mean? The intuition is as follows. When there's a large number of buyers and large number of sellers, you have a competitive environment. In the competitive environment, the competition drives down the price. What does that mean? All the firms engage in the price war. Anyone charges a higher price, he's going to lose the consumer. They will always go to the firm that offers a cheaper price. So eventually, this excessive level of competition drives down the price to what? To equal to its cost. Because once you hit the cost, you cannot drive further down. Because if you do that, your company will be bankrupt. That's the maximum point or minimum point you can touch. Is that clear? So that's the intuition. Now, there's another side of it. It also means the competitive environment actually reveals, their price reveals the true cost. Whatever the price the competitive environment or the competitive firm charges, this actually reflects their true cost. Because we know price equal to marginal cost, it has to be true when they are maximizing the profit. Is that clear? That also means the competitive market is efficient. We already know from the proposition 1. Does it make sense now? So the intuition of P equal to MC is that in the competitive market, the price reflects the true cost. There's no manipulation. So if you go for the dairy product, say dairy milk, no matter whether you go to the Coles or Woolworth or the neighborhood grocery shop, you'll find the prices are very close. Right? You don't find one is charging $5 and another is charging $1. That will never happen. Maybe $3.20, $3, at best 20 cents difference, but it's almost close. One of the reasons is this is a competitive farm, and the competitive environment puts down the pressure on the price, put the pressure on the price so it down towards the marginal cost. That's the reason. Once it hits the marginal cost, you cannot do better than that. Clear? Think about this way. I can create an example. This is exactly what you did. Remember that, can you see that? There's a two company, UMH and PPL. Both of their cost is, marginal cost is $1, $1. Remember that? One is charging $3, $3. Once the information is revealed, then remember these two companies engage in the price war. And eventually, what happens that PPL and both companies choose marginal cost equal to price equal to 1. Remember that? Because what will happen, UMH company says, okay, I'm charging $3, but then PPL says, oh, my cost is 1, and we have the same cost, and it's $3, so I'm going to charge $2. Then the consumer realizes these guys are offering a lower price, so they will go there. Now UMH will retaliate, cutting its price from $2 to $1.50. Then consumer will go there. So they keep engaged in the price war. When this thing happens, eventually the price will drop towards the marginal cost, which is $1. This is exactly what happens last week. Once the price is reached there, no one can do better than that. No one has an incentive to deviate from there as well. Because if you choose price lower than 1, then you're not covering your cost. You can't do that. Clear? So this is the intuition of the competitive market. Now let's see how far I have covered. So I covered the property 1, right? Then I also covered the proposition 1. You see the P equal to MC is already covered. MR equal to MC and how this thing won. And then we also said that P equal to MC, that would be sufficient. So that would be suffice. There's a typo error there. P equal to MC will be sufficient to justify the efficiency of any market. So any market that you have price equal to marginal cost, it also means that market is efficient. The intuition is as follows: price reflects the true cost. Clear? So that's the reason. So we finish perfect competition pretty much. Now I'm going to show you how to calculate the profit. What is the break-even point? What is the shutdown point? And then finally, I'm going to cover a long-run entry and short-run entry, right? Long-run profit or entry. So page, this is the another one, 1, 2, 3. Now think about this way. I want to calculate the profit. So how do I calculate this? I'm going to go for step by step. First, I know this firm is a competitive firm. If the firm is a competitive firm, then the demand curve it will face is this. I know that. Statement 1. If the statement 1 is true, then I also know price equal to average revenue equal to marginal revenue. That is, statement 3 is also true, right? Now I bring, this is price, this is quantity, this is, I can show here average cost and marginal cost. Remember in the last week lecture class, we said the average cost is U-shaped curve, right? And the marginal cost is also U-shaped curve, but it goes in this way. Remember the reciprocal relationship between average product and marginal product of labor is already there, right? Now the question is, how much profit and what? First find out the profit maximizing output level. Step 1. Profit max Q star. What will be that point? We already know from the proposition 1, their profit maximizing condition in the competitive firm is P equal to MC. Right? So where is my MC curve? This is my MC curve. Where is my P line? This is my P line. So where is the point P equal to MC? That's the point. Right? So this is the point where MC curve cuts P line, which means at this point A, your P equal to MC, that condition is satisfied. Now what will be my profit maximizing output level? So the output level that corresponding to that point A will be my profit maximizing output level, which is Q star. Clear? So step 1, profit maximizing Q star. How I get that? First, use the profit maximizing condition P equal to MC. From there, you find the output level Q star. Step 1 is just complete, right? Step 2, what I want to do now, I want to know at Q star, what will be my total profit? That I want to know. Now, to do that, look at this. I'm talking about the total, but here is no total curve. All you have average cost, average revenue, right? Then another way to do it, remember your total profit is defined as a total revenue minus total cost. Remember that? If you divide both sides with Q, Q, and Q, then what you will get, your average profit, which is equal to your average revenue minus average cost. That means profit per unit of output is equal to revenue per unit of output minus the cost per unit of output. Clear? So since we have average revenue and average cost, clearly we can find out the average profit straight away. So at Q star, now I will see, at Q star, what will be my average revenue? So your P line is also average revenue. So at Q star, this is my average revenue. Can you see that? What will be my average cost? So at Q star, the corresponding point that lies on the average cost curve is this point. So this will be my average cost. But what is the average profit? It is the gap between these two curves. So basically, this is the average revenue, average cost. So the gap between these two curves will be this. And that will be my average profit. Is that clear? Now the question is, what will be the total profit? Step 3. You know, when you have an average, say for example, you have a total revenue, right, divided by Q, and that will give you average revenue. Remember that? Now, if I know the average and the Q, then what can I do? I can get total revenue, average revenue times Q. Can you see that now? So basically total revenue divided by Q, that will give you the average revenue. Now average revenue, then total revenue, I can multiply by this, right? So total revenue will be average times the Q. Do you agree? If you don't agree, I can give you an example. Suppose you have 1, 2, 3. What will be the average age? So one has 1 year old. Another person is 2 years old. Another person is 3 years old. What will be the average age? If you don't understand, I can go through 1 was 2 plus 3. How many number beings are there? 3. So basically 2 plus 1 is 3, 6, 3, and that will be 2. Now, if you multiply the average age, right, times the number being, you actually come up with the sum of total age. Let's check. So your average age is 2, right? So I'll just write it down. Number being is, how many number beings are there? 3, right? So if you multiply by these things, so average age times the number being, you actually got 2 times 3, that will be 6. Now look at this. What is the total number of ages? Sum of the total number? That is 6. Is that clear? This is exactly the logic that I'm going to start. So I know the average profit. I also know what will be the total output. So basically, here you can write down your average profit, which is profit divided by Q. That is, by definition, is the average profit. Remember last time, the pi stands for total profit. Total profit divided by Q is your average profit, right? Then, so pi here is total profit. Then I can write my pi is equal to average profit times Q. That will be total profit. So my average profit is this, am I right? My total output is this. So if I draw a line like this, now can I claim this is equal to this Q star? Right? Why is that? Because this looks like a rectangular, and Euclidean geometry says the opposite side of the rectangular must be equal and parallel. So obviously this side and this side are equal. But then this side is my Q, right? Now look at this. Average profit is this. Q is this. So if I multiply, I will get the total profit. But geometrically what it means, your average profit is the width. And your Q is the length. Width times length, what you will get? The area of the rectangular. Remember, the area of the rectangular is the width times length, right? So your average revenue is, average profit is this, which will be your width. Q is your length. If you multiply these two, you actually end up with the area of this rectangular, and that will be your total profit. Is that clear? So this is what you need to do. Step 1, find out the profit maximizing output. How we get it? Price equal to MC. That will give you the Q star. Step 2, at Q star, find out what will be your average profit. How you get that? It's basically average revenue minus average cost. That will be average profit. Step 3, you know that your total profit will be the average profit times the output level you produce. Here, that will be Q star, and that will be average profit. So I'm not sure whether you understand this one or not. It's called average profit. Is that clear? Average profit times Q star, then you get the total profit. Now I'm showing you how does that mean. In fact, what you'll find, your average profit is the width, and Q star is your length. Width times length, you actually get the area of the rectangular, which will be your total profit. This will be also true if you go for monopoly. The same mechanism. Nothing has changed. Except the demand curve is downward sloping. Any question about this one? Now, if someone says, so tell me, at P equal to MC, how much profit they make? That's the area of this rectangular. That's the total profit, right? Now you need to know what is the break-even point. So 1, 2, 3. So what page is that? 1, 2, 3. That's a 4, yeah. Now you need to know a couple of things. One is the break-even point, another is the shutdown point. So this is 5. So now I'm talking about the break-even point. So what is the break-even point? No profit, no loss. So basically you have a 0 profit, right? How do I show that? Well, again, if it's a competitive firm, that's the demand curve, statement 1. Statement 2, 3 says price equal to marginal revenue equal to average revenue. Remember that? Now the question is, you have profit is 0. Look at this, what is happening. This is my average cost, and this is my marginal cost. So find out step 1. What is that? Find out the profit maximizing output level, find out where P equal to MC. This is my MC, this is P line, so this is the point where P equal to MC, so this will be my Q star. Step 1 has completed. Step 2, find out the average revenue and average cost at Q star. So at Q star, this is your average revenue, so this will be your average revenue line. Average revenue, sorry. And what is average cost? It will be exactly the same, because this point belongs to Q star, right? Corresponding. So your average revenue and average cost is the same. So what is the difference between these two? Will be 0. 0 times whatever output you produce, 0 times any positive number will be 0. Actually, 0 times any real number will be 0. No, still not enough. 0 times any infinite is also 0, right? So basically, 0 actually creates some sort of identity here. So in this case, you actually find your profit 0. Now, this is sometimes called break-even point. The main thing is when your price is equal to minimum of the average cost, because this point lies the minimum point of the average cost. Can you see that? So when price equal to minimum of the average cost, you always find that you're earning a 0 profit, and that will be also break-even point. Now, here's the thing. When the price is equal to average cost, by definition, you always get a 0 profit. But that does not necessarily mean it is efficient. It will be efficient only if the minimum point is achieved of the average cost. Now I can show you sometimes, although it is not covered by our course, that's why I don't want to put so much emphasis. What will happen, suppose your demand curve is downward sloping and your average cost curve looks like this. Now, this is the point where average cost and price are the same, right? So why is that? Because demand line, that is your price line, is tangent to the average cost at point A. Then what you will get, at this point, your average revenue is equal to average cost, so it's earning a 0 profit. That's true. But look at that, this is not a minimum point. The minimum point is there. So in other words, what it means, this farm has an excess capacity. They're not utilizing full of its capacity, right? Only in the competitive farm, you'll find this. This is, obviously, demand is downward sloping. So what does that mean? It has a market power. And it is reflected there. Even though you force them to earn a 0 profit, but it also means they're not utilizing their excess capacity. They can produce more and their cost will be further down, right? Generally, when we talk about the monopolistic competition, that will happen. The best example is the Pepsi and Coke. They will face this, right? But that's a different thing. It is not captured by your course outline, so forget about that. You might ask me why I put minimum. Because 0 profit can be also earned if price equal to average cost, right? So keep that thing in mind. Now the question is the shutdown point. I think I have one student who actually asked me about the question shutdown point last night, and I answer. Is that student here? I don't know. Oh, you're here, right? Did you get my answer? Okay, I'll show you now what is this. So basically, when you talk about the shutdown point, what does that mean? Shutdown point means you choose your production decision, and what is that? You're going to shut down your plant. I'm not engaging in any production, right? Why? I completely shut down. I'm no more in the business. That's the idea. Now I'm asking you when this will happen. Okay, first I create an example. Suppose I run a domestic airline business, right? To run a domestic airline business, I rent an aircraft. And every year, so for 1 year I rent an aircraft and I have to pay $100 no matter what. So in other words, that's a part of the fixed cost. Clear? Then my variable cost, suppose this is my, you can think about average fixed cost, whatever it is, and then my variable cost, or you can say average variable cost, is $100. Right? So what will be your average cost now? 100 plus 100? $200. Right? But the price that I'm charging at the moment, remember, I'm operating in the competitive farm, so I cannot manipulate the price. Price is already determined by the industry. and that determined price is $1.50. Question, am I making profit? So price, remember in the competitive firm, price also means your average revenue. Remember that price is equal to average revenue? So what will be my average profit here? So average revenue minus average cost, that will be average profit. So, So average revenue minus average cost, that will be average profit. So average revenue here, 150 minus 200, that means fine is $50, which means you are incurring loss. Even though I incur loss, should I shut down or should I continue my production? That's the question. So he says I should continue. What do you think?
Because if you don't, anyway you have to pay 100. Then your cost would be 100.
Yeah.
100, but now if you continue, it's
Sorry?
Sorry?
There's no way that I have a break-even point because you can see that my average cost.
No, sir, I'm saying that like, only once a company has a break-even point, till that level it should continue.
Even though I'm less than, so here I'm in lower than break-even point, right?
You should not continue.
So he says continue, you says no. Okay, now they are good economists. I'm highly confused. One says yes, one says no. Anyone else, or should I vote? Okay, he says depends. He's become very strategic, right? So anyone else? So I've got three answers now. It depends. One says continue, one says shut down. What else is required? I think you don't have any other option. All are covered, right? So the person who says we should continue is the right one. Now I'm going to tell you why. When you are incurring loss, right? Okay, you are maximizing, profit maximizer, right? Duality theorem says profit maximizer by definition also means you are minimizing your loss. It's the same thing. Now that you incur loss, right, you need to minimize it. What is the best way to minimize it? Let's see. Suppose I shut down my production, right? Then remember that average fixed cost, which I rented for 1 year, I still have to pay, right? So that cost is still there. If I continue my production, what will be the average price? That means average revenue is 150. So that basically means my average loss is 50. Tell me, 50 is better than loss of 100? What do you think? So that basically means if I continue, it is true that I'm losing money here, $50, but this is far better if I shut down because then I have to lose $100. Right? Which one I'll do now? Better to continue. So the intuition is very simple. The intuition is as long as you cover some part of your fixed cost, in the short run, you will continue your production. Why? Because if you don't, then you lose the whole part of the fixed cost. It is better to lose some part of the fixed cost because some part will be covered. Clear? This is exactly the same thing that I'm doing. If I shut down, then I'm going to lose $100. But if I continue, I'm keep losing $50. So I think now it's better to lose $50, not to lose $100. Clear? Now the question is, what if, suppose instead of average price $150, now becomes $100. What will happen? Now your average revenue is $100. In this case, 100 minus 200 is minus $100. Am I right? Now, should I continue or should I shut down? The fact is, I realize that if I continue, I will lose $100. If I don't continue, still I lose $100, right? But the fact is, if I don't continue, at least I can save my variable cost. Do you agree? Because if I produce 0, my variable cost will be 0, right? So it is better now to shut down my production because I cannot cover my fixed cost. Clear? So this is why whenever someone says fixed cost, always remember it is come from the fact your price is equal to minimum of the average variable cost. Now I'm going to show you graphically what does that mean. But before that, everyone is okay with this example? It is better sometimes fiddling with the numbers because that can tell you exactly what you're doing, right? Now in the diagram, let's see. Suppose this is my average cost. In my notes on perfect competition, I did not draw the average cost. But now I'm putting back to average cost and see what happens. And your average variable cost is this, right? Last week, we know the difference between average cost and average variable cost, that is nothing but your average fixed cost. Remember that? Last week lecture class, we covered that. Now suppose my price is here, which is the minimum of the average variable cost, and your marginal cost goes like the minimum point of both. So that's your marginal cost, right? So find out the profit. Step 1, P equal to MC. So this is my MC, this is my P equal to marginal revenue equal to average revenue. So this is the point where P equal to MC. Am I right? So what will my output level? Q star, which is this. At Q star, what will be my average revenue? Which will be this. What will be my average cost? The corresponding average cost will be this. Am I right? So obviously I'm incurring loss because my average cost is higher than my average revenue. Clear? So how much average loss I'm earning? Exactly this gap. But if you look at this, this is the gap between the average cost and average fixed cost, right? So that basically means my average loss is nothing but the average fixed cost, which I'm losing. So now what does mean? If I produce Q star, I'm losing the whole amount of average fixed cost. If I don't do that, still I'm losing the fixed cost, right? But I can save my variable cost. Variable cost depends on your output. If your output is 0, your variable cost is 0. If your output is positive, your variable cost is positive. It's just like a wage bill. The more workers you hire, you have to pay a higher wage bill. But if you hire 0 worker, your wage bill will be 0. So your wage bill is the variable cost. The moment you shut down, your variable cost will be 0 straight away, but your fixed cost is not, right? But here what I realized that if I continue, I lost my fixed cost. If I don't continue, still I lost my fixed cost. That is total fixed cost. How I get the total fixed cost? This is your average fixed cost times the Q star. You actually got the total fixed cost. Remember the average times Q always give you the total, right? So the idea is as long as you don't cover your fixed cost, any part of your fixed cost, it is better to shut down. That's why your shutdown point comes when the price is equal to the minimum. So this is the minimum point of the average variable cost, and that's your shutdown point. Is that clear? Anyone? No question? Yeah.
For the other part, if you're making a loss that is equal to your average cost, means that it doesn't matter if you operate or if you shut down.
Exactly, because you are still losing the whole average fixed cost. So as long as you are losing whole average fixed cost, now when I say average fixed cost, you can always get the total fixed cost. By average times the output you produce is your total fixed cost. So in this what it means, per unit, fixed cost per unit of output, that's your average fixed cost, right? As long as fixed cost per unit output is not recoverable and you lose the whole amount, it is better to shut down. Why? Because what will happen, at least you can save your variable cost, right?
But in reality, is it going to be the case?
Yeah, it's always going to be the case because as long as you cover your fixed cost, for example, the early example, it is better to continue. But as soon as you realize that your fixed costs, you're losing all of them, then it's better to shut down. If you don't, then this economic theory says you are not doing the right thing, because you are not minimizing your loss.
So we're sacrificing our market share?
What's the point of sacrifice? Because even though you're producing Q star, it will not cover your fixed cost, right? And your profit is loss, which is average loss is this. So the total loss will be this rectangular, which is your negative profit basically. So one hand you are incurring negative profit, which means total loss. More importantly, you don't cover the fixed cost, and in fact, you'll find your total or negative profit is exactly equal to your total fixed cost. So what will you do? You need to shut down, right? So this is exactly what I'm telling. Okay, I'll ask, what's your name again? Did you understand now? Is clear? Okay. She put that question, and I thought that it's better to discuss these things in this way, right? Now, I go with the break-even point. I also cover the shutdown point, and then I need to cover the entry, right? So entry and exit, that's the one thing that I need to do. So what is entry and exit, and how does that work? So 1, 2, 3, this is 5, this is 4. So after that, we'll take a quick break, okay? I think enough. In fact, after that, the perfect competition will be finished. So this time, I'm talking about long-run entry and, sorry, it's called the entry and exit. How this thing happen? Entry and exit. Do this. That would be good. Suppose, now I need to put everything together. So I need to look at what is happening to the industry. At the same time, in that industry, an individual competitive firm, how it behaves, right? So I put everything together. So what will I do? Here's the industry. So this is the industry, and this is the firm I that belongs to this industry. So basically, you have a demand, you have a supply, industry has a bargaining power, so they determine the price P star, and that's the P star, right? An individual firm, they take that price P star as a given, so this is their average cost, and this is their marginal cost, right? So first, I need to find out what is the competitive firm's profit maximizing output level. Step 1, what is that? P equal to MC will determine your Q star, right? So this is PMC, this is P star, which is equal to marginal revenue equal to average revenue. So this is the point, P equal to MC, so this will be your Q star, right? At Q star, what will be my average revenue? That will be my average revenue. At Q star, what will be my average cost? That will be my average cost. So what is the difference? The difference is this line, which is my average profit. Average profit times the total output, that will give you the total profit, which will be the area of this rectangular, and that will be the total profit. Is that clear? Okay. So what do we learn from here? So this is an industry, and we learned that in this industry, tell me, is this industry profitable? The answer is yes. This individual firm is the representative of all individual firms who live in or belong to this industry, right? So it says that this individual firm I actually earns excessive level of profit. It's not a zero profit, it is greater than zero. Sometimes Paul Samuelson, the Nobel laureate, called it supernormal profit. Any economic profit which is greater than zero is called a supernormal profit or excessive level of profit, right? So this is happening. So in other words, this industry is very profitable. Now, remember, in the real world, the investors are always they are constantly searching for an opportunities to invest their money in a sense that where they will get the maximum return. That means profit, right? So suppose I'm a potential investor. What should I do when I find this? Right? The best way, okay, I realize, oh, the farm this industry is very profitable. Think about this way, this is a pre-GFC 2008 era. And I realize this is a real estate business. Of course, it is not a real estate business because some of the real estate might have a market power, right? Keep that in mind. I'm assuming the real estate business is profitable, competitive market. And then I realize each real store or real estate agent, they're earning a supernormal profit. What will I do? I will invest money in there. The moment I invest, what does that mean? That means, remember the seller, the supply curve, these are the investor or the farm. Farm invest, right? So the moment the farm enters, what will happen to the supply curve? It will shift. Now, what is the intuition of that? The thing is, when the competitive firm in a competitive industry earns excessive level of profit, it gives a signal to the other investor or other firms, hey, look, if you enter in this industry, you can share that profit. Now the other firm has an incentive to enter. The moment the other firms enter, the number of firms actually go up. Right? Number of firms goes up. So what does that mean? It basically means your supply increases. Now, if your supply increases, it means your supply curve will shift in this way. If it shifts in this way, suppose it shifts in this way up to this, you have a new supply curve, which is S prime. As a result, new equilibrium price is determined, which is P1. Clearly, P1 is less than P star. But once the P1 is reached, what will happen? Each firm is now earning a zero profit. Right? So basically what it means, when in competitive industry earns a supernormal profit or excessive level of profit, it gives a signal to other firms to enter. Since the other firms are constantly looking for profit opportunities, they will enter. Once these firms enter, the competition in this industry will go up. And that competition drive down the price in such a way that eventually every firm will earn a zero profit. That means their break-even point will be reached, right? Once the break-even point is reached, now what will I do? Then everyone realizes, oh, if I enter, I will get zero profit. If I don't enter, nothing will change. That's why this is the long-run equilibrium condition, which is zero profit. Think about the other way. Suppose there's a two industry. Both of these industry earn a zero profit. Now tell me, industry A, any firm from industry A has an incentive to enter in industry B? The answer is no. Because industry A's firm realized, if I enter industry B, remember industry B is already in zero profit. My entry will cause a negative profit now, because price will drop further down, right? So he has no incentive to enter. Similarly, industry B firms find the same situation and they have no incentive to enter industry A. So in other words, in the long run, this zero profit condition will ensure you there will be no entry or exit. That's why this zero profit condition is also called a long run equilibrium condition for a competitive firm. Clear? You can also think about this way. Suppose the firm's loss. What will happen? In the short run, the firm will continue to production as long as they cover the fixed cost. But in the long run, remember, there's no fixed cost. Everything varies. And still the firm earning loss. What will it do? It will simply shut down. Because if it shut down, its variable cost is zero, and in the long run, fixed cost does not exist. Right? Because in the long run, remember the production function, every input varies. So what does that mean? There will be exit from the industry. That means number of the firms decreases. That also means the supply will shift to the left. It will push up the price. Eventually, it will restore the zero profit condition. Clear? So that's why the zero profit condition is the equilibrium profit condition for the competitive firm in the long run. Right? Why? Because then there will be no entry, no exit. If the competitive firm earns a zero profit, you want to enter, number of the firms goes up, it will push down the price. That means whoever in that thing, including myself, just potential entrant, as a potential entrant, everyone gets a negative profit, right? So for me, it's not wise to enter, right? So that's the reason. Is that clear? So why not we take a quick break and then we'll start the monopoly, which is actually today's lecture class, right? So I'm okay. It's okay, right? I'm a bit behind because of the last week power outage and all those things. So take a quick break for 10 minutes, then we'll start again. So meanwhile, I put the pause. Thank you. Come from the break, and now we're going to start the monopoly case. So here is the monopoly. No, that's not monopoly. Yeah, that's the monopoly. So imperfect competition and game theory. So whenever someone says imperfect competition, that means the competition is not perfect. So obviously we are deviating from the competitive market. Now, the one extreme of the imperfect competition is monopoly, right? So what does that monopoly means? Monopoly means there's only one. Mono means one. So monopoly means there's only one seller or one producer. Because it's by nature one seller or one producer, that producer or seller has a market power. So according to our statement 2, the demand curve it faces is downward sloping demand curve. Keep that thing in mind. Now we talk about the price maker, price taker, price strategy, price discrimination, the comparison, monopoly is evil, natural monopoly, and the game theory. I'm not sure whether I can cover the game theory or not this time, but I'll try my best. If not, we'll cover next relevant lecture class, right? So what is monopoly here? As I said, there will be large number of buyers, there's only one seller or one producer. Mono means one. And how this thing happens, either the producers who produce the product is very unique, that basically means no one can replicate that, so there will be no close substitute. Very often, this thing happens because of the government's exclusive patent and copyright thing. So for example, the Microsoft produced the Windows Vista, and it has got copyright protection. So what it means, no one else can replicate or copy is Windows Vista. If you do that, it will be illegal. That's what it means, right? Okay. Now the question is, what the monopoly does is that take it or leave it offer. So what it means, they are not the price taker, they are the price maker. Any price maker, they can always offer you take it or leave it. What it means, okay, I'm producing this, I'm the sole producer, someone else's water bottle, I don't want to touch. Yeah. Okay, this is my water bottle, right? So I'm the sole producer of this bottle, and I know everyone needs that, right? So all I'm going to do, I'm going to charge a price $5. And I say, if you like it, take it. If you don't like it, leave it, I don't care. Because I definitely know that I'm the only one who's producing that. And I know there's a demand there. So everyone will come to me. It's just like a Microsoft Windows Vista. Everyone is used, now that we use Windows 10, right? Everyone is using Windows 10 and all those things. Then what happens, there's no other choice but to go to Microsoft, right? So that's why it's called take it or leave it. When a firm has a market power, always remember, when a firm has a market power, it can always offer take it or leave it, right? Now, one important thing, because it has a market power, so what does that mean? It basically means its demand curve is downward sloping. Why? Because by that, it means it can manipulate the production, either making goods scarce or plenty. By doing that, it can change the price as well, right? And that's how it exercises its market power. Now, one of the important things that you'll find in the monopoly is this bit. Can you see this one? Price is always greater than marginal revenue. That's the important part. So what does that mean? It basically means, remember, in the competitive firm, price is equal to marginal revenue. Go back to your statement 3, you'll find that. Because their demand curve is perfectly elastic, that means parallel to the horizontal axis. But here, this will not happen. So now I'm going to show you why and what is the consequences of that. Let's go back to the doc cam. So because monopoly, right? Monopoly has a market power, so the demand curve it faces is downward sloping. We already know that. And by manipulating the production, it can change the price, and that's how it exercises the market power. So this is price, this is quantity. Now let's look back. So if the demand curve is downward sloping, what are the relationship between price, average revenue, and marginal revenue? That's what I'm trying to do, right? So I want to know the relationship between the price, average revenue, and marginal revenue. So to do that, total revenue is still price times Q, right? Average revenue by definition is the total revenue divided by Q. Put the value of total revenue, that is price times Q divided by Q. Q cancel out, price equal to average revenue. So that basically means it doesn't matter whether you consider monopoly competitive firm, average revenue is still equal to price. That's a good thing. Nothing has changed there. Now, what happens to the marginal revenue? So the marginal revenue is change in total revenue over change in Q. Am I right? Now, put the definition of the total revenue. So that basically means change in price times Q is exactly the same thing that I have done before. Remember in the competitive fund? The difference is competitive fund cannot change the price. Remember? That's why we put the price in front of this. But the monopoly can. So you cannot take it out. Right? In fact, this thing can be written as this way. Do I need to show you this? I'm not going to show you. I'm going to write this thing. Okay, so trust me, it will be there. So let me check. That will be price times Q, and that will be change in P over change in Q. You can write in this way. Right? Now you can tell me, Nobin, how you get that. One way to get is this. Remember, when you have a change in total revenue, that might happen either change in price, no change in quantity, or change in quantity, no change in price. Right? Or change in price and change in quantity. But this will be so insignificant, you can ignore that. Right? Now, divide both sides with change in Q. So what will happen? Change in Q. So divide both sides with change in Q. Then I can write this one is change in P, change in Q, Q, plus change in Q times P. That will cancel out. So eventually that will be P, Q, change in P over change in Q, which is exactly what I have written here. Right? Now, this part, forget about it. I'm not interested. I'm also not interested how I derive from here to here. That's not the part of this course. But what is important here, what does that mean? Right? So what I got here is marginal revenue equal to price. That's true. But then I got additional term, change in P over change in Q. Right? Now, if you look at carefully, what is that? That looks familiar. Can anyone tell me? If you look at the demand curve, the vertical run, I'm showing price, so the vertical run will be your change in price, remember? And the horizontal run, I'm showing quantity in the horizontal, so that will be change in Q. So the slope of the demand curve is change in P over change in Q. So this means this is the slope of demand curve. Clear? Now tell me, is the slope of the demand curve is positive or negative? Of course, downward sloping always shows you negative relationship. So this is a negative value, right? Now I don't want to do a double counting. So what I need to do here, if I put say minus 10 and this is called an absolute sign, what does that mean? Now in the layman term, but don't take that thing granted, it means something different. But in the layman term, when I put the absolute sign like this, it means I'm ignoring the sign, right? So the moment I say minus 10 and put the absolute, that will be 10. The moment I have a plus 10 and then absolute, it will be 10. But in real analysis, it's not like that. It is actually talk about whether you're talking about the right side or the left side of the axis, right? There's a lot of things. I'm not going in that way. So here, think about this way. When I put the absolute sign, it basically means I'm ignoring the sign. Now I know this is a negative, right? So can I write in this way, P then plus Q. Q is always positive, right? But then since this is negative, I can write Q minus, can I write in this way? So basically what I'm saying, I'm taking this minus sign here, but then I'm ignoring the minus sign because there will be double counting. So I want to make sure there will be no double counting here. Clear? If this is the case, then plus minus is minus, and this is multiplied, so I can write minus Q del P over del Q. Can I write in this way? Now we have a relationship, marginal revenue is this. Tell me, which one is greater, P or marginal revenue? Which one is greater? Okay, Since someone gives me a marginal revenue, someone says P, I'm a bit confused. So let's put in a primary school's math, very simple number. Suppose marginal revenue is 10, right? And my price is 15, right? And then I say minus 5. Question I'm asking, is that greater or this greater? Of course, you know that 15 is greater. Why? Because the price, then you reduce some part, and then it will be equal to marginal revenue. Then by definition, it must be the case price is greater than marginal revenue. Is that clear? So don't make that mistake again, right? So always remember, when you put marginal revenue equal to price, but then you deduct some part from the price to make this price equal to marginal revenue, then it must be the case price is greater than marginal revenue. Clear? What is the intuition of that? Okay, now I understand the price is greater than marginal revenue. This will happen when your demand curve is downward sloping. I get that part right now. But the question is, what does that mean? Remember, it basically means the rate of change is basically the slope of the demand curve. Now, what the monopoly will do to exercise his market power, he will cut back the production, and how much his price will change, that actually depends on the slope of the demand curve, because you are moved along the demand curve. Say, for example, you are, can you see that? So you are here, right? If you decrease the production, then you are moving from here to here, right? But then it is this slope which actually matters, because that actually captures the rate of change. So in other words, how much price they can manipulate, that market power will be determined here. So if you change Q, how much marginal revenue will affect, that actually depends, or you can say price, that actually depends on the rate of change of the demand curve. Clear? Because once you make the goods scarce or plenty, how much price will increase, of course that depends on the rate of change of the price, because of slope of the demand curve, because it predicts if I change Q, how much price will change. And if I know that rate, then if I change Q by 1 unit, then I know what will be the total effect I'm creating. Right? That can increase my price or revenue, marginal revenue, whatever you say. You can rearrange these things in terms of price, and you can actually look at that thing. Is that clear? Okay. This is one of the reasons when you look at the monopoly, you always find that when the price line is here, your marginal revenue always lies below the price line. The proof I have shown you before, because price is greater than marginal revenue. It is coming from the fact the monopoly can exercise the power by manipulating the quantity production. By manipulating the quantity production, how much it can change the price, that is shown by this equation which we just this, right? But then this also means this. If you don't realize that, take a number 10, price is 15, and this whole part is 5. Then you know why I say 15 is greater than 10. Clear? And the intuition is, in this case, always remember the price line is above the marginal revenue line. Is that clear? Now, we go back to this curve. Now, it is not the part of this course that you need to derive that thing, right? So you see, this is exactly why I write P equal to MR, and then you can see delta P, delta Q is negative because it's the slope of the demand curve, right? So once you do that, now this bit is showing you what is the relationship between the elasticity and the marginal revenue, basically, right? So look at this, marginal revenue, this looks familiar, right? So now I put Q inside the absolute sign because I want to ignore that thing, it doesn't matter, Q is positive anyway. So then this I already shown you. By manipulating this, but especially this term, I can write in this way. But that's the formula for elasticity. In fact, that's the reciprocal of the elasticity, and that's why I write it down here. Right? Now quickly look at this. If the elasticity equal to 1, that means this eta d is equal to 1, what will be this expression? 1 minus absolute sign of 1 divided by 1, that will be 1. So then 1 minus 1 will be 0. 0 times P will be 0. So that basically means when the elasticity is 1, marginal revenue will be 0. Clear? So this is exactly what we are showing here. Look at this. This is the price line. Your marginal revenue lies below the price line. And when your elasticity here, the midpoint of the demand curve will tell you the elasticity 1. When the elasticity is 1, you can see that corresponding marginal revenue will be 0. Right? And when the elasticity is inelastic, which is below this lower segment of the demand curve, right? Then you'll find your marginal revenue will be negative. And when your elasticity is highly elastic, that means elasticity is greater than 1, which is the upper segment of the demand curve, you find that marginal revenue is positive. Right? Now, here's the thing. What is the purpose of saying that? Why I'm doing this? Why I'm putting the elasticity? The main message here, suppose a monopoly is a profit maximizer. If it is a profit maximizer, then it must satisfy MR equal to MC, which we cover as a property 1. Remember, I said irrespective of market structure, it must satisfy MR equals to MC, right? Now tell me, with this demand curve, which part of first of all, your MC cannot be negative because your cost cannot be negative. We know that, right? Now, given that we know the relationship between the elasticity and marginal revenue, which part of segment of the demand curve monopoly will operate? Upper segment, midpoint, or lower segment? The thing is, monopoly needs positive marginal revenue so that it will be equal to positive marginal cost. Am I right? So at least from that point of view, you can see that if I choose the midpoint, my marginal revenue will be 0, but my cost is not 0. So that means my cost is higher than my marginal revenue, which means my additional cost is higher than my additional revenue. Why I'm going to operate? In particular, when I have market power. I should not do that. If I go to the lower segment, then my marginal revenue will be negative. There's no way you find marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, because marginal cost is positive, marginal revenue is negative. That will never be equal, right? Immediately it tells us monopoly will never operate in the inelastic region of the demand curve or the unit elasticity demand curve. It will always operate at the elastic region. Clear? That's the main message of all those exercises. So if you really hate the equation, my suggestion is forget about the equation. Equation is not or never be the main part of this exercise. The main message here, monopoly always operate on the elastic region of the demand curve. That's the main message. Why? Because I have a market power. If I have a market power, why I'm going to charge a lower price? What's the reason for that? I'm not a benevolent. I want to maximize my profit, right? So obviously, I will never charge a lower price. In other words, the inelastic demand means lower segment of the demand curve. Obviously, that segment will give you a lower price. He will never do that. Clear? You understand this exercise now? So if the question says, do you think the monopolies will operate the inelastic region of the demand curve? Then you need to say, if the monopoly is a profit maximizer, then it must satisfy MR equals to MC. If it operates the inelastic region of the demand curve, then your MR will be negative. So that basically means it cannot maximize its profit, because it violates our property 1, which we described before. As a result, the implication of this one is the monopoly will never operate at inelastic region of the demand curve. If I have a market power, why I'm going to charge a lower price? The intuition is, no, that will never happen. So here's the intuition. They actually think about the inelastic region, right? Monopoly doesn't care who is what. And this is the reason, if you look at the pharmaceutical drug case, right? The pharmaceutical drug is inelastic demand. Am I right? Why? Because once your doctor prescribed, you have no other choice, especially the life-saving drug. You have to buy it to survive. Monopoly knows that. Now, when the demand is inelastic, what it will do? They says, okay, I can charge as high price as I can because no one else can do that. You know that? And this is exactly the reason why in every developing or developed country, the government always regulates the life-saving drug. Because they know monopoly will never operate at the inelastic region. So it will operate the elastic region, which means the upper segment of the demand curve. And by definition, upper segment of the demand curve means it charges a higher price. Right? That's why we need a regulation. In Australia, we have PBS. In India or Bangladesh, you have a government highly regulated. They provide a subsidy, huge subsidy, 90% or more than that. Does it make sense now? So remember, the equation is never be the part of the exercise. If you don't feel comfortable with the equation, forget about it. Try to understand what I have, or try to understand this diagram. Clear? Think about that pharmaceutical drug. That will be enough. Okay, here's the pricing strategy. So this is the table. Now this is, I need you to draw an attention and you need to solve these things right now. This is a table for a monopolist, and it says that suppose the monopoly produces 2 units of the product. The price per unit is $20. Its total revenue is 40. Total cost is 20. Total profit will be total revenue minus total cost, which will be 20. Right? And so on. Now tell me, if I'm a monopolist and I want to maximize the profit, which quantity should I choose? 2, 3, 4? The answer is 2. Why? The fact is, I'm a profit maximizer. So first, I look at my total profit. I have 20, 15, and 0. Right? Now I need to look at which number gives me the highest profit. The answer is 20. So I will choose 20. That's my maximum profit I can achieve. And the corresponding output level is Q, which is 2, and the price is 20. So I will sell 2 units of the good, and I will charge $20 per unit, and then I achieve maximum profit. That's the answer. Clear? Question, can monopoly do better than that? I'm a Microsoft company, right? Oh, I love to see that, Microsoft, oh, the Bill Gates, right? So I own the Microsoft, say for example. I am producing Windows 10. At the moment, I'm producing 2 units of Windows 10, charging a $20 price. As a result, I'm getting maximum profit 20. The question, can I do better than that? Sorry? What? Producing? 1 unit? No, he's talking about, in a sense, that monopoly can charge, so make the goods scarce. And if I make the goods scarce, then obviously it will push up the price. Right? But how much price? I don't think it will be, because if I produce 1 unit, right, still I don't think, maybe the profit will go to 20 to 21 or 25 or something. Right? Not more than that. The thing is, now I'm considering a different scenario. Think about this way. There's a 3 income group in the market. The quantity 2 belongs to the high income group. Right? Quantity 3 belongs to the middle income group. And quantity 4 belongs to the lower income group. And look, if this is the case, then what I'm doing, for quantity 2, the high income group, I'm going to charge a higher price, 20. For middle income group, I'm charged $15. But the lower income group, I'm charged $10. So what I'm doing, I'm discriminating the price now according to their income. So the idea is, for the lower income, I know their purchasing power is not that high. So I keep the price low for them. For the higher income, I know these are the rich people, so I keep the price high. The middle income, they are in between, so I keep my price in between. This is called a price discrimination. If I do that, then what will be my total profit? From the high income, I'm getting $20 profit. From the middle income, I'm getting $15 profit. And from the lower income, I'm getting 0 profit. It still is the economic profit 0. It means all factors getting their return. So my total profit will be 20 plus 15 plus 0 will be 35. Clearly, 35 is greater than 20. Now, it makes more sense. So what it means, don't think that Microsoft doing a favor to producing a Microsoft Office student version. Of course, what it does, it gives you a lower price, and some of the features will be absent as well, right? Because they want to exploit that lower income group as much as possible and make sure there's a 0 surplus for that, right? But the more importantly, why they're doing that? Because they're trying to each segment of the market.
They want to make the entry barrier.
No, each segment of the market. Segment means there's a lots of different types of people live in the society according to their income, right? Some are high income, some are low income, some are middle income. If I simply produce one group, the other two segments are not covered. But clearly, if I discriminate the price and capture all the segments of the market, that will increase my market share, right? If the market share is increased, then obviously my profit level will go up. This is one of the reasons why the monopolists discriminate the price. But when they do, they also do something more. What is that? For the goods that I'm offering, the low price goods, I make sure no surplus is left. So what it means, when I'm offering the Windows for student version or the Microsoft Office for the student version, some of the features, I take it out. It's not allowed for the students. But when I offer the professional version, which is the higher price, you'll find I'm giving you full features there. So what does that mean? The high type consumer, I leave some surplus for them because these are my high type consumer, they want to pay higher price. But for the low type consumer, I'm going to exploit them as much as I can. Right? This is how they operate. So always remember, the price discrimination is not just mean that they're favoring the lower income group, simply it means they try to increase their market share. As a result, instead of getting profit 20, now they're getting 35 profits, which is much bigger. Now you say the entry barrier. Entry barrier is not coming from that fact.
So like you're covering all the segments and you have a greater market share.
No, the entry barrier is coming from the fact the price discrimination, whether it creates an entry barrier, that's a different thing. The price, if you charge a lower price, sometimes we call it the limit pricing. The idea is I'm going to charge a price lower than my cost for one period or two period. For example, the Microsoft did that when they tried to launch Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer has some cost. Remember, this has to do the programming and all those things, but they gave it to free, which means lower than their cost. Why is that? This is called a limit price. The idea is I'm cutting my nose to kill everyone else. And once the Netscape Navigator is out, then I raise the price now. Capture the whole market. Remember this story? But that price is called a limit pricing. It's not a discrimination, right? Because I'm creating an entry barrier in a sense, I'm offering you such a lower price that you cannot beat it. But here is not that. I'm only offering a lower price only for the low income group. But at the same time, I'm taking some of the features out. So this is called a discrimination, price discrimination. Does it make sense? So now you understand, I also put that Windows, why they put a student version. Now, Monopoly also knows one thing. The high type, the low type, they cannot mispresent because they cannot afford the high type of goods, right? But the high type can mispresent. What is that? I'm the high income group, I can afford professional, but I just go to the Microsoft and say, hey, look, give me the student version. I'm a student. Basically, I am mispresenting myself. Microsoft knows that this will happen. So every time someone wants to buy a student version, these days they will ask you, can you show the evidence of your enrollment, the current enrollment from the university? They're not happy with the student ID card either. You have to show your student enrollment. So they want to make sure that you are not mispresenting yourself. Clear? So this is another issue when you discriminate the price. Okay. So do you understand now? One of the important fact is Now, when they discriminate the price, they are not following the marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, do they? They are not. One of the price discrimination is called a first degree price discrimination. And the idea is, I'm going to charge a price exactly your willingness to pay. So the lower income people, their maximum willingness to pay is $10, and I'm going to charge $10. For the high income group, their maximum willingness to pay is $20, I'm going to charge $20, right? So if I do that, that also means I'm not following MR equal to MC. So here's the thing, sometimes when I give a question, what is the profit maximizing condition for monopoly? Everyone write a condition, okay, for monopoly the profit maximizing condition is MR equals to MC. And you think your answer is correct, and then you find that you actually get a 50% mark for that. Why is that? Something is wrong with your answer, right? Always remember, one of the vital things that you have missed. If you say, if the monopolist is a single price monopolist, that means monopolist is not allowed to discriminate the price, then his profit maximizing condition will be MR equals to MC. No doubt about that. But if the monopolist start discriminating the price, then it will not follow MR equal to MC. It will simply follow maximum willingness to pay, price will be exactly equal to that. So now I'm going to show you with the doc-cam what does that mean. Suppose, can you see that? So this is a monopolist, so this is a price, this is a marginal revenue, right? This is a marginal cost, and this is average cost. Clear? Okay. Now I'm assuming this is a single price monopolist. Now if it's a single price monopolist means he's not allowed to discriminate the price. He will choose only one price. Then what price it will choose? The price it will choose where marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. So let's see, this is a marginal cost, this is a marginal revenue, this is the point where MR equal to MC. Now you got your Q star. So remember, in the perfect competition, how we get the Q star? When P equal to MC. In the monopoly case, especially in the single price monopoly case, we got the Q star for MR equal to MC. Clear? That's the difference. Now the corresponding price will be this. So that's the monopoly price P star. Clear? What will be the monopolist profit? Again, you need to find out what is this. So price is also equal to average revenue. Remember that. But marginal revenue lies below the thing because we already proved that here. So what will happen at this Q star, this will be your average revenue, and then this will be your average cost. So this will be your average profit. Is exactly the same analogy that we have used before. Average profit times the Q, that will give you the total profit, and that's the monopolist profit. Clear? Now I'm asking you, this will happen when it's a single priced. If monopoly discriminate, price discriminate, what it will do? Monopoly first realize, okay, I'm not going to charge a single price to everyone, right? I'm going to put each segment. The first it realized what will be the real cost, where the price equal to marginal cost. So that will be here, remember? So unit price is equal to your unit cost. Clear? So once they realize that this is the unit cost, in fact, that's the competitive outcome. Price equal to marginal cost. Now the monopoly says, okay, I'm going to produce up to QC, but not choosing this price. So if I produce Q1, the corresponding price will be the maximum willingness to pay, which is a point of the demand curve. I will choose P1 price for Q1, right? If I choose Q2, then corresponding price in the demand curve will be P2. So for Q2, I'm going to choose P2 price, right? Similarly, if I choose Q3, then I'm going to choose P3 price, and so on. So if I choose QC, then this is the price I will choose. I call it PC. By doing that, what will happen? I will capture the whole thing, and the whole consumer surplus is now my profit. Clear? And initially I got this profit. As long as this triangle and this triangle is greater than this, I'm getting more profit now. I'll come back to the later how this thing happens, right? So do you understand now? So now they are not following this rule. They are simply, this is called a first degree price discrimination. So they will charge price exactly to your maximum willingness to pay. Always remember, each point of the demand curve tells you the maximum willingness to pay. So if I produce Q1, corresponding demand point is P1, that will be the price for that. So this is the reason when you answer the question, and if I ask you what is the profit maximizing condition for a monopolist, then write a sentence like, I'm assuming this is a single price monopolist. So what does that mean? This monopolist is not allowed to discriminate the price. If that is true, then its profit maximizing condition is MR equal to MC. But if the monopolist is allowed to discriminate the price, they will not follow that. They will either follow price is exactly equal to your maximum willingness to pay and take all the surplus from consumers, right? Or they can discriminate with your with respect to income. We call it third degree of price discrimination. Either way, it will not satisfy this rule. Clear? So this is the vital matches from there. Does it make sense now why the monopolist? Now next time if there's a price discrimination, you do know what they're doing. Basically it means they're making more profit by capturing more segment of the market. That's what it means. Now you become very smart, right? Now I covered this price discrimination, I covered that thing. Now here's the one of the important thing that you need to know. What I'm doing here, I'm just trying to capture or trying to compare between monopoly and competitive firm. And I want to know which market is more efficient, right? So this is 8. So this is, so what I'm trying to do here is a competitive firm. You can see that, right, in my handwriting? Competitive firm versus monopoly. I want to see which market structure is more efficient. So I'm finding out efficient, which one is that, right? To do this comparison, I make one ridiculous assumption. Very, very ridiculous. But as I am aware of that assumption, that will not change the qualitative result. As long as the qualitative result doesn't change, I don't care about that assumption, right? What assumption I choose? Suppose I'm assuming my average cost is equal to my marginal cost, which is my C line. As I said, this is very, very ridiculous assumption, which means your cost per unit and your additional cost is exactly the same. In other words, your total cost is linear. That's what it means. If your cost is linear, then marginal cost, the slope, will be constant. This is exactly what I'm writing here. Is that clear? Okay. Now, I want to compare. So basically, this is a demand curve, which is a downward sloping. Then I know marginal revenue, so demand curve is also your price line, also your average revenue line. Remember that. Now marginal revenue is below the price line, so it will be there, right? And then I put my average cost and marginal cost is equal to constant, which is C. Clear? Now I want to compare. So the first thing is I will look at competitive outcome. Then I will also look at monopoly outcome. The first thing I need to look at who offers output level, what, how much. I'm comparing the output level, what the competitive firm is producing and what the monopoly is producing. I need to figure it out, who is producing more. Now I know, remember this step 1, competitive firm, how I find out the profit maximizing output level? When price is equal to marginal cost. Remember that? Monopoly, how I find out there? Now this is a single priced. What it means, this monopoly is not allowed to discriminate the price. So if it's a single price, how I find out the profit maximizing output level? That will be marginal revenue equal to marginal cost. So find out where is MR equal to MC. So this is MR, this is MC, so this is the point where MR equal to MC. So the corresponding output level monopoly is this, and the corresponding price level will be this. Clear? Whereas comparative farm P equal to MC, so this is MC and this is P line. So this is the point where P equal to MC. So the corresponding output level will be QC and corresponding price level will be PC. Who is offering a higher amount of output? Monopoly offering QM, comparative farm is offering QC. So when I look at the output, I can see that the comparative farm offers a higher level of output than monopoly, right? Now I need to look at the price. Who is offering a lower price? So comparative price is PC, monopoly price is PM. So when I look at the price, I find the PC is lower than PM. These two information will be sufficient to tell which market is more efficient. It basically tells you the comparative market give you more output with a lower price, whereas monopoly give you lower output with a higher price. So clearly, competitive market is more efficient. Because of that, competitive market is efficient. Right? Do you understand that? You can check. Monopoly offered this price, whereas comparative offered this price. With this price, monopoly offered this quantity, but the comparative firm with this price offered this much quantity. So one hand you got a lower price, another hand your output level is very high, right? Now go back to my proposition 2, long time ago that we covered. What is that? If you deviate from the competitive market outcome, you end up with the inefficiency. So we know the competitive market outcome is QC, right? Monopoly is producing QM. So clearly, they underproduce the goods. When they underproduce the goods, what will happen? The deadweight loss will appear. And here is your deadweight loss. So the monopoly has got the deadweight loss. So in other words, monopoly is inefficient. So I can say deadweight loss in monopoly is positive, whereas comparative firm there will be no deadweight loss, 0. That's also another sign that monopoly is inefficient. I really like my proposition 2. You see, it's always coming. All you need to do, figure it out what is the competitive outcome. Are we underproduce goods or overproduce goods? That's it. Then rest will follow. Now the question is, what we established so far, competitive firm is efficient. And you can ask, Navin, you don't need to do this. We already know from the proposition 2, right? Now, this is another implication of the proposition 2 because you are deviating from the competitive firm's outcome. From QC, you are producing QM as a monopolist, which means you underproduce the goods. That's why the deadweight loss appears, right? Now the question is, even though this is the case, why the government continue with the monopoly? Why they give a copyright, patent? Why is that? Okay, first of all, I realized the competitive firm is efficient, monopoly is not. Why? Because monopoly charge a higher price, lower quantity. Competitive price, low, quantity is high. So clearly, competitive market is better. Monopoly is inefficient. That's first we established. The second thing is, even though monopoly is inefficient, why the government gives a copyright or patent? In other words, it creates a monopoly. The moment I give you a copyright, you are the sole producer of that goods. Unless you license that to someone else, you're the only one who can deliver the product in the market. So essentially, I'm creating a monopoly, even though I say the monopoly is inefficient. Right? So that's the first question. So I'm asking you, do you understand my question? My question is, even though monopoly is inefficient, why the government gives the copyright? Second, suppose monopoly does not follow MR equal to MC, then this evil becomes a giant evil now. Why? Because it discriminated the price and it captured the whole surplus. Oh, sorry. Okay, so it captured the whole surplus, right? So what does that mean? It exploits everyone now. And exploitation actually gives them a more profit, right? Now the question is, now you have to look at very carefully, first, One thing that I omitted from these things, even though I talked about the deadweight loss, everything is clear, right? Deadweight loss, I talked about the quantity, price, comparison. One thing I did not talk about is the profit. Who gets the higher profit? So look at this. At QC, this will be your average revenue because the demand curve is your average revenue, which is price line. This will be also your average cost, so the profit is 0, right? So I will say the competitive profit. So profit C means competitive profit, which will be 0, right? Why? Because at QC, your average revenue and average cost is exactly the same. Remember, this is your average cost, this is your average revenue. So this point also tells you your average revenue equal to average cost. So the profit is 0. What happens to the monopoly? Well, the monopoly's profit at QM, your average revenue is this much, average cost is this much, so this will be your average profit times the Q, you actually get the total profit, which is this triangle. Right? So in other words, monopoly's profit is greater than 0. Clear? Now, sometimes what happens, especially in the research and development, R&D, some of the industries, R&D's nature is so volatile, you possibly can't imagine how volatile it is. For example, the best example is two industries. One is the IT, another is the pharmaceutical drug. For example, all those companies now investing so much money on R&D to develop either the drug which can cure HIV or a drug which can cure cancer, right? But its nature is so volatile, even though you spend billions of dollars, still there's no guarantee that you come up with the definite drug that can solve the problem, right? Because this R&D nature is depending on that, because our knowledge are limited, we are progressing, but that marginal progress is not enough to get us there, and we don't know when we'll get it. Now, if the government invests R&D, government can always do that. Government can invest billions of dollars on pharmaceutical drug to develop a new drug, right? Pharmaceutical company to develop a new drug. But the problem is, even though, say, my budget is $3 trillion or $300 trillion, right? Still, there's always a probability I come up with 0. But the moment you put $300 trillion, where does this money come from? Government does not get money from heaven. They have to tax people. Now, if I tax that much money and I come up with 0 outcome, that basically means this is a wastage of money. Taxpayer money, right? So the cost will be really high. Instead, why not we encourage the firm, privately they will do it. So what I'm going to do, I'll tell this, look, as a monopoly, you can earn this profit, right? So here's my incentive. You do your research, fine, I have no problem, but whoever come up with the drug first that can cure the cancer, I will ensure the next 20 years you'll get the copyright for that. Now that gives me an incentive because I realize somehow if I am successful, the next 20 years I'm going to enjoy this profit. Yeah? So in terms of R&D, then it is really good to have a monopoly. On one hand, you can save the taxpayers' money. Another hand, it is now private firms' interest to carry on the R&D because they realize if they're successful, then they will get the patent or copyright and enjoy that profit for a certain period of time, right? So in terms of R&D, we can say, well, the monopoly might be better because the competitive firm has no profit. Look at this, competitive firms, remember the long run equilibrium profit is 0, so they don't have an excessive level of profit to invest on R&D, but the monopoly, they do, right? This is one of the reasons, in particularly IT or pharmaceutical drug, you always find the government encourage them by giving a patent or copyright. Does it make sense? Okay. So I'm not just explaining that, I'm also explaining the real world picture to understand what is happening. So pretty much, I follow this comparison. So is monopolist the evil person? But look, it is not necessarily when it comes to R&D, right? We need that as well. So this is a comparison and all those things. So here's another example. Now, I'm not going to draw a diagram for that because this diagram is clear enough to understand. What I'm trying to do here is as follows. Sometimes what happens, your average cost, instead of U-shaped curve, is just falling. You never face the upward sloping average cost. So the more you produce, your average cost is falling. Can you see that? The average cost curve here is falling and is never go up. So if you look at the average cost clearly, I'll show you with my mouse. Can you see my little hand there? Okay. So this is the average cost, and you can see that it is falling up to this. The thing is, it's called a falling average cost. When a monopolist faces an average cost which is constantly falling, we call it natural monopoly. When the average cost falls, it means the more you produce, your cost per unit of output goes down, right? So that's the average cost is falling, and we call it what? Natural monopoly, because it enjoys the economies of scale benefit. The more you produce, your cost goes down. Then it must be the case you have any economies of scale benefit, right? In other words, what it says, if you increase all of your input by 10%, your output actually increase more than 10%. That's why your cost per unit actually goes down. So some of the monopolists are facing that kind of average cost, and we call those monopolists natural monopoly. When the monopoly face average cost U-shaped curve, it is not a natural monopoly, because up to minimum point of the average cost, they have economies of scale benefit. As the average cost start going up, that basically means now they have a diseconomies of scale, right? But when the monopoly face only the economies of scale benefit, that means average cost is falling, they never face the upward sloping average cost. That basically means it faces or it experiences the economies of scale of benefit, and we call it natural monopoly. Now the real world example, what is an example of that? Generally what happens when the company owned by the government, right? For example, if you go to the Indian subcontinent, the railway is owned by the government, right? And when the government owns some company, for example, the transportation railway, they invest huge amount of capital to develop the infrastructure. Because their initial investment is so huge, as a result, what happens, the more you produce, your cost per unit actually goes down. It's coming from the government huge investment. In Australia, we also have this kind of natural monopoly, not now but before, a couple of years ago, when the government owned the Telstra. You know the phone company Telstra? Government initially owned the 100% of share, where the government invests huge money on that. I think now they sell some of the share to the private company. But what happens, because the government invests huge, then Telstra has economies of scale benefit. The more it produces, cost per unit goes down. One of the implication is still now you have Yes Optus and what other companies you have? Yes Optus, Vodafone and all those things. But when you go to the remote area of the bush services, they are using the Telstra's infrastructure because the government invests there. That's why the Telstra is still enjoying the average cost falling, which means natural economies of scale benefit, right? The question is, now that we established that the government invests heavily, that's why they face the falling average cost curve, what would be the pricing strategy government should follow? Remember, this company owned by the government, and the demand curve is downward sloping because it has market power. Think about this way, the transportation, as a government, I own it. And there's no other else can compete with me because I own the railway station or whatever it is, right? The whole railway is mine. It's a public transport I'm talking about. If that's the case, then no one is competing with me, right? I'm the monopoly. I can do whatever I like to do. I can discriminate the price. I can choose MR equal to MC single price. The question is, when the government owns the company, what would be the appropriate or good pricing strategy? First, if I go for competitive pricing, that is price equal to marginal cost, what will happen? So look at this. In this diagram, can you see this is your marginal cost? Demand curve is also your price line. Can you see that? Price equal to average revenue and demand line. So this is the point where you have P equal to MC. Can you see that? That's the competitive pricing. That's the one way to go. But if I use the competitive pricing, then what will happen? P equal to MC, so the output I'm producing here, but at this output, my average revenue is this, but my average cost is higher than that. Can you see that? As a result, I'm incurring this blue shaded area, which is the loss. Now I have a problem. Remember, if I put a price too low, of course the consumers are benefited. But remember, I'm the government, I have to look at both the producer and the consumer. I cannot favor one to other, right? So if I drop the price to the competitive price, consumers will be very happy, but the producer will be bankrupt. Because look, they are incurring loss. So clearly, competitive pricing is not a good strategy in this case, right? Another way to do it, why not you ask a monopoly price? Do not discriminate the price, just MR equal to MC, follow that. If I do that, then what will happen? Look at this. This is the point where MR equal to MC. Can you see that here? Can you see my hand? This. And the corresponding price will be this much. Corresponding output will be this. And then this blue shaded area comes. And I can see that's my profit as a monopolist. But then how much price I'm charging? Very close to 4. It's way above the marginal cost pricing. Can you see that? As a government, I don't like that either. Because what I'm doing now, I'm charging price so high. Always remember, monopoly, single price monopolist price will be the highest price in the market, right? So I'm choosing price so high, producers are very happy, but the consumers are worse off because they have to pay now a higher amount of price. I don't like that outcome either, right? Basically, I'm now favoring producer, but not consumer. But when I follow the competitive pricing, it's the other way. I'm favoring consumer, but not the producer. Now the question is, can I do better than that? The thing is, I can do one thing. Instead of choosing monopoly or competitive price, why not I maximize the sale? That basically means I'm going to produce as much as output as I can, but while I'm doing that, without making any loss. What means? What is that? Without making any loss means, okay, I'm not maximizing the profit, but I simply cover my cost, and I want to maximize my sales. When this will happen? This will happen when your price is equal to average cost. You see this point? Price equal to average cost. What does that mean? Remember, your price is also average revenue. So it means average revenue equal to average cost. We know the average profit will be 0 then. So what does that mean? This is the maximum output I can produce, which is near here, right? Can you see that dot line? That's the maximum output I can produce. This is called a sales maximization, such that I'm not incurring any loss. But at the same time, I'm not incurring any excessive level of profit, right? If I do that, then what will happen? You can see that the price will be lower. It is very close to competitive price, but it still is a bit higher, right? But it is definitely lower than the monopoly price. Then probably that will be the answer. So when I own the company as a government, what I want to do, I want to maximize the output, but at the same time, I make sure that producer is not making any loss. One way to do that, you produce your output, you set your output in such a way that producers get 0 profit. Economic profit 0 means every factors get their return back. Once you distribute the returns to the factors, no excessive level of profit is left, right? So that's why we follow the average cost pricing. Now, if you go to the real world now, you find that US Optus, Vodafone, they're offering you a better deal, right? But if you look at the Telstra, it's a bit dearer, right, compared to their prices, but their service is much better than those companies, especially if you live in the remote area or the bush area. Clear? This is one of the reasons. Does it make sense? Okay, so I just finished monopoly. Now the game theory stuff. What is game theory? Okay. Why I'm using a game theory? What is the purpose of the game theory? One of the things is, in the market, we know the extreme one is the competitive firms, where there are thousands of firms, thousands of buyers. Another extreme, there's only one firm. That's the monopoly, right? When there's thousands of producers, what will happen? You cannot observe all of them at one point of time. Suppose there's billions of producers. Can I observe each of them, what they're doing? That's quite impossible. Time, cost, and all those things will involve, right? So in this case, that's the competitive firm, and eventually you follow the P equal to MC rules. In the monopoly, there's no question of following someone else, because by definition, there's one producer. What if there's a few producers, which you can count? Suppose banking industry in Australia, there's 4 big banks: Westpac, ANZ, Commonwealth, and National Australia Bank, NAB. Now, when you have a few producers, then what will happen? My operating or my decision-making process not only depends on my cost strategy, but it also depends what my rival players are doing, right? Say, for example, during the GFC 2008, or after the GFC 2008, ANZ Bank claims they cannot cover their costs, so they raise the interest rate, even though RBA does not change its interest rate. Did you notice? Anyway, if you don't notice, that happened. That's the fact. The moment the ANZ Bank increased the interest rate, guess what? All other banks, they did exactly the same thing. And after 6 months, they produced the profit. Each and every bank makes billions of profit. What does that mean? I thought they're incurring loss. That's why they raised the interest rate. And look, at the end, everyone does the same, right? So what does that mean? It basically means my action not only depends what my cost structure or what resources I have, it also depends what my rival players are doing. If my rival player is doing something different, then it will impact me. So I have to prepare for that. Either I follow the same suit or I will retaliate with that, right? Australian government and Amazon. Amazon is a dominant player, right? And Australian government wants to tax them to raise the revenue because we need to support our public health, public education, and all those things. The moment we tax, look what these guys are doing. They retaliate, they make the Amazon international site, that is US site, inaccessible to Australian consumer and force them to pay more money, right? So clearly, when there's a few players, whoever observes whoever's action is, then obviously that has an impact. The best example is I come to this class and I stand up on this desk without saying any word. What would be thing in your mind? The first thing, why is Nobin doing that? Is he insane? The thing is, my action has impact to you, even though I did not start lecture or anything else. Game theory is a tool that analyzes those things. Basically, it tells you how, given that my opponent's player does this, what is the best way to handle this kind of thing. In other words, given my player's strategy, what is the best strategy I can choose so that I can maximize my objective. Now, I keep in mind, if you learn a game theory, it will also learn or teaches you how to cheat. You know the cheating? How to cheat, but at the same time, it will teach you how to cheat in the best possible way so that you will be the winner and your rival player will be miserable. Sometimes that's why economy is also known as the science of devil. Today I'm going to show you how you do those things, right? The best example is that Singapore Airlines, how they try to enter. The Qantas wants to block it, right? Because they realize if they kick out the Virgin Blue that time, then Singapore Airlines will enter and the price will drop drastically. So one way to do it, they block the entry by making sure that Virgin Blue always remains in the market. Eventually, the Singapore Airlines realized, oh, the Qantas is playing the game now. So what they did, they retaliate. So they launched the Tiger Airways, which is owned by the Singapore Airlines, majority of the share. And when the moment Qantas realized the Tiger Airways in the in, they also retaliate. Now here's the action is taken care of. So what they did, they says immediate threat to Singapore Airlines, you cannot use my infrastructure. Basically, you're trying to raise their cost. Then again, the dominant firm, remember your action also, because these are the few firms, Singapore Airlines can observe what the Qantas is doing and Qantas can observe what the Singapore Airlines is doing. So Singapore Airlines realized, okay, you are not blocking me in that way, let's fight. They cut the price. From Melbourne to Queensland, you got $35. And after that, it was quite mess, right? Eventually, they are forced to come back some sort of mutual understanding what to do, right? But this is the part of the game theory. Sometimes when the firm retaliates, how you analyze the retaliation or whatever the action you choose, how the other firms will do. So let's start with the game theory part. And I'm going to back to my notes now. So what the notes is, this is the game theory. So game theory is concerned with the strategy of the decision maker who are conscious that their strategies affect each other. I already give you an example, Singapore and Qantas, and how this thing happens. In other words, game theory is concerned with the strategic interaction of the decision makers. Now, what is the games? Like any other game, every game has three things. One is players, another is strategy, another is the payoff. So who are the players here? Players are those who make the decision, right? Any decision maker you will consider as a player. It could be consumer, it could be government, it could be farm. If the farm wants to make a decision, for example, in the Amazon case, then Amazon is a player. If the government wants to do something, then government is also a player. So in our article, the Amazon and Australian government, these are the two players, right? Now, what are the strategies? Look at this. Strategies are the rules that tell an individual player which action to choose to each instant of the incident given his own information set. So strategy basically is the rule. So given my information set, what will be the best response or the best strategy that I can choose so that I can maximize my objective, right? Similarly, every strategy has got payoff. Of course, each strategy you choose, it will give you a different level of profit. And your strategy will be the best one that will give you the highest profit, and so on, right? So this is the payoff. Now, this is not just a game. If you choose any game, AFL, cricket, soccer, you always find these three things are present. Can you see that? So if you talk about soccer, then players are those 11 players of the team, and they're playing the other player group or country. There's another 11 player. Strategy, what will be your strategy? To win the game. And if you win the game, what will be your payoff? That 3 points. So that you climb up the ladder to get your championship. Clear? So it is just like that. Now, one of the important things when you solve the game is information is a common knowledge. Now, in the game theory language, when you say the common knowledge, what does that mean? Tell me, if I say common knowledge, what does that mean? Sorry? In game theory, it is more than that, right? So, your name is Jasmine, right? Jasmine? Yeah. So, if I say it is a common knowledge between Jasmine and me, Nobin, what does that mean? That means both of us know that, but it is more than that. It means I know that, and I know that Jasmine also knows that. But this is not end in there. That it also means I know that Jasmine knows that, I know that Jasmine knows that, I know that. And keep going on that way. And this is one of the vital things to solve the game. Now I give you an example. This example is taken from the Reader's Digest. And I tell you why the common knowledge is important. Okay. So let's go back DocCam. To do that, I'm going to create an example. I have taken this things from the Reader's Digest or some other newspaper, I forgot. Suppose there's a 2-door, right? Let's call it door 1 and let's call it door 2. There's a two door, right? In the door one, there's a one guard, or you can say doorkeeper, whatever you say. Let's call it X, right? In front of the door 2, there's another doorkeeper. Let's call him Y. Now, each of these door, right, one of these door belongs to hell, right? The moment you open the door, you ended up with hell, no matter what. There's no way back. One of the door goes to heaven, right? This doorkeeper knows exactly which door goes to hell and which door goes to heaven. So these are the common knowledge, right, between X and Y. So in other words, X knows that, Y knows that, Y knows that, X knows that, which door belongs to heaven and hell. Clear? You don't know it till you open the door. Clear? Now your objective, of course, remember you need to set up your payoff. So your payoff is such, your objective is to go to hell. Is it right? No, exactly. Your objective is to go to heaven. Nobody wants to go to hell. That's your objective, right? Now the question is, what will be your strategy? This says you have only one option. What is that? You can ask only one question to one of these doorkeepers. But you cannot ask question both of them, one of them, right? Now those who know this story or answer, don't answer. Leave the others so that they can figure it out. The question is, what question should I ask? I have only one question. Either I can ask X or Y, but I cannot ask both. What question should I ask so I can go or find out the right door to heaven? There's a one clue. What clue is there? One of them is a pathological liar. He always lies, no matter what, right? And one of them is truthful person. He always speaks the truth. The problem with me is I don't know who is liar and who is the truthful person, right? But that doesn't change the fact I still want to go to heaven, and still I have one question to ask, either to X and Y. But that truthful person and pathological liar, this is also a common knowledge between X and Y. So X knows that, Y knows that, X knows that, Y knows that, who is liar and who is pathological liar, or a truthful person, right? What question should I ask? Those who know that, I think you guys already know that, then don't ask. Can you solve that? Just use the definition of the common knowledge. Solve this game. It's very simple. If you want to, this is a very good example how the game theoretician exploits the common knowledge to solve the game. What question should I ask? Hey, it's a very simple question, right? What do you think? Simple? Still you're thinking? Huh? So basically he says that I will approach to X and I will ask him, is this door goes to heaven? Do you think that will give you the right door? The problem is you don't know whether X is a pathological liar or the truthful person, right? If he's a pathological liar, he will always say, even though it's the wrong door, he will always say it is. And the moment you open the door, you cannot go back. You have to move forward, so you end up with the hell. There's a 50% chance of that. But I don't want to go to hell. 1 minute time I will give you, and then I will give you the answer. So 1 minute time. So basically you have 20 minutes left. This is what the game theory is all about. Okay, I think I'm not going to wait, right? So let's see how we solve the game. Here's the thing. What is the common knowledge? The common knowledge is X knows that, Y knows that, Y knows that, X knows that, and so on, right? So all you need to do, you approach one of these person. Suppose I approach to X, right? I'm asking a question, but not his opinion. I'm asking the opinion of this guy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask X, Mr. X, if I ask a question to Y, which door belongs to heaven? What will be his answer? Whatever the answer he gives, I'll choose the opposite door, and that will be always the right door. You understand? So the common knowledge means X knows that, Y knows that, X knows that, and so on, right? So I'm approaching him, asking opinion about this guy from him. So what I'm saying, okay, Mr. X, if I ask a question to Mr. Y, which door belongs to heaven, what will be his answer? So now here's the thing. I'm approaching him, asking this guy, right? So this guy, there's two possibilities. Y could be a truthful person. If Y is a truthful person, then X is a liar, right? Another possibility, Y is a liar, then X will be truthful person, right? Let's start with this possibility. So I'm asking him, if I ask Y which door belongs to heaven, what will be his answer? Suppose Y is a truthful person. So he will show me the right door. But who is giving me the answer? X. He's a liar. So he will actually tell me the opposite door, right? So whatever he says, I will simply choose the opposite door. That solves the problem. Now take about this possibility. Suppose the Y is now liar, right? Sorry? Okay. Now the Y is liar, right? So I'm asking Mr. X, that basically means X is a truthful person. So I'm asking X, if I ask Y which door belongs to heaven, Y is a pathological liar, so he will always give me the wrong door. But who is giving me the answer? Is the truthful person, so he will give me exactly what he says, right? Again, I choose the opposite door. Clear? No matter what you do, you choose the opposite door, and that will be the right door, because one of them is liar. So you always end up with the door of hell, right? So you always choose the opposite one. This is one of the examples how you solve the game by using the common knowledge. Using common knowledge to solve the game is a very important thing. Is that clear? Now I'm going to show you, now that you know what is the common knowledge, isn't that a very interesting thing? The common knowledge, how you exploit. Now I'm going to show you the definition. This is the observation, basically I'm talking about this. So I'm going to show you, before I go to the prisoner's dilemma, I need to show you the definition of the Nash equilibrium. So perhaps you have heard a beautiful mind, right? John F. Nash. So today we are trying to, John Nash, he actually discovered this equilibrium. So he used this common knowledge to solve the game, right? If you go to his Beautiful Mind movie, remember he was in the bar and he was talking about the blonde girls and all those things, and he realized that if everyone goes for the blonde girl, no one is getting it. And that's a common knowledge. So all you need to do, you need to go to the other girls. So at the end, what will happen, the blonde girl will leave alone, but everyone gets the girl, right? That's one way to use the common knowledge to solve the problem. In fact, he actually discovered the mathematical way or mathematical reasoning to solve the game by using the common knowledge, right? Today, I'm going to show you how you do that. The best example is called a prisoner's dilemma. So what is a prisoner's dilemma? How much time have I got? I've got 2 minutes time, so I don't think this will be enough to solve this game, so I will go in the next week, right? But before that, I'll just show you what is the Nash equilibrium, which I gave you the definition. So this is the Nash equilibrium. He says that a strategy combination is the Nash equilibrium if each strategy in the strategy combination is the best response for each player, given his rival strategy, and if no one has an incentive to deviate. So basically he says the equilibrium will be that strategy which will be your best response given your rival player's strategies, so that, and of course the rival player, this is a common knowledge, right? So the rival player will also do the same thing. It also find out his best strategy given my strategy. Once we find out the two best strategy for each player, right? Only two persons, so there's a two best strategy. Make sure no one has an incentive to deviate from there. If you find that kind of a strategy profile, then Nash says that will be the equilibrium, and that will be the answer. This is exactly how he solved the game, the blonde girl problem, right? So next week, we'll start with the Nash equilibrium, and not next week, probably following week, right? Next week is the holiday. But make sure that you attend this Sunday because we are discussing the assignment question, right? The Blackboard session. Okay, till then, Uh, I think I will stop here.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah,
So at what time we'll be having services?
from 10. No, it's on the online. You go to the cloud
Yeah,
classroom, you'll find that.
Thank
So
you,
all you need is a laptop or your iPhone, that will be fine. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop here and see you next lecture class. Thank you.
Just had a doubt.
Yeah.
When there's a completely